Welcome to Fintech Chatter, presented by Tier 1 People, leaders in fintech executive search. Follow us on your favorite podcast player or Fintech Chatter TV on YouTube.
Hello and welcome to Fintech Chatter, the show where I connect with fintech leaders for a bit of a chat. Today is a bit of a special guest, and a guest that's a bit different for the show. I'm joined by Greg McKenna, who is the CEO of Police Bank. Greg, thanks for joining me.
Great to be here, Dexter.
It's such, I think for me, such a kind of almost like an epiphany moment to have you here. I remember back in 2020 at the beginning of COVID, and I made a prediction that I thought that we'd see kind of mid-tier and community banks really push on from this point and be able to access the talent that we'd see coming from fintechs and neobanks. And it's taken a little bit of time to get there, but I think it's starting to happen now.
Yeah, I think it is. Our new CIO, Linda Bushell, came from various places, but including 86400 and then Nubank and more recently Hum. And I think what you find with a lot of those people who worked in the fintechs, it's not that long ago, really, is it? Only sort of 3, 4, 5 years ago, they had an alignment of passion for customers that we do in the mutual banking, community banking space. And so there's a natural fit. They wouldn't necessarily fit in a big shop, like a Westpac or a NAB or somebody like that. So we're lucky. We're lucky to have Lyndall, and I think you're right. I think there'll be a little bit more of that as time goes on, and other organisations like us, really push down this sort of transformational route.
Now, could you tell maybe our listeners a little bit about Police Bank?
So Police Bank was formed in 1964 by a bunch of police officers in the number 1 division in Sydney, and it was a needs-based organisation. Same things mutual banks are now. We're all about the members, and we're all members, all of us who work in the bank. And so back then it was difficult for folks to borrow money. And so by pooling their savings in the police credit union, they were able to then help out other police officers. And so we, slowly grew. And from there, we now look after the New South Wales Police Force, the Australian Federal Police Force, the Tasmanian Police Force, and Border Force. There are other police-style banks or banks that started out with a focus on law enforcement in WA, South Australia, Queensland and Victoria. So we're part of a big group that really focuses on police officers and more broadly now essential service workers,
So I've got to ask the question, why do police officers need their own bank? What's wrong with just going to a regular bank?
Well, I guess these days you'd probably ask yourself the question of do they? You can get whatever service you want at, whatever price you want these days in the financial landscape. But I guess the thing that you'll get from us and our colleagues in this police banking space is you'll get a real dedication to the cause, to the community that is those law enforcement officers, those police officers and Border Force. You get a real commitment to service. And, that's one of the things that we hear most. We're connected to our members in a way that you don't get connected with the bigger banks. And then we try and back that connection up with good rates on deposits and home loans and everything else. And now we're transforming to give them really sexy tech as well.
Now, I want to talk about the sexy tech part in a moment, but before we do, what you said in the intro really resonates with me, because I remember back in 2017, talking with some of the kind of founders of the early neobanks. And I think, they had this shared philosophy, right? And it did very much remind me of almost like banking has come full circle, where a bank started with a community and, where we live now, right? The bank was the kind of fulcrum of that society, and we built cities and infrastructure and all this stuff around it. What's been the thing that's held back community banks from actually fulfilling on that kind of promise? Has it been the tech, or do you think it's been something else?
So I think that we fulfilled our promise in the early days. We're sitting here in Newcastle, and Newcastle Perm's been around for 120 years.
Yeah.
And, they started out with a lottery system for people who wanted to buy houses. It was a building society, right? Police Bank started out serving police. So we did start out as needs-based, and we really filled that. But I think as regulation and deregulation and all those kind of things started to happen, and as technology really started to play a role, I'd say the thing that held us back to a large extent is not that we're not serving the need, it's that we can't compete with the technology. So the legacy technology that we're grappling with now, and that a lot of community bank, mutual banks grapple with, is no different to why so many transformation efforts fail in many businesses all over the world. You've got that legacy tech, and to give you the agility and the adaptability to respond to changed customer desires. We kind of lack that. And so to a certain extent, I think that's what's held us back a little bit. But if COVID did anything for the mutual banking space, it really re-energized us to focus on the members with a tech offering. Now, there's lots of different ways to do that. We're taking one route. But I think that what you'll see going forward is exactly what you said. Mutual banking is the business structure that is, profits go back to members in better service, in lower rates and all that kind of stuff. It's the product or the solution for banking for the times. And so I think you'll see us continue to grow.
Yeah. Sounds like a DAO or one of these funky things you hear about in DeFi.
That is all a DAO is. A DAO is just a mutual structure in many ways, right? Although I'd argue that DAOs will struggle. If no one's going to take charge, the buck's got to stop somewhere. And I think that's the inherent business model problem with DAOs. But yeah, similar thing.
So talk me a bit more through the digital transformation that you've been through.
Yeah, so we're partway through. So we're still in the process of moving our core banking solution. So what we did, and the genesis of it was some work I did for Business Insider back in 2017 and 2018, ironically sponsored by the Commonwealth Bank. I worked in the research vertical, and I got worked really closely with the teams inside the CBA, and then I got sent to Cybos in Sydney in 2018. And up in the second floor in the back corner, that's where all the fintechs were. Yeah. And it was really exciting. And as somebody who cared deeply, I'm a banker, right? So a bit of a finance nerd, but it was clear to me then, back in 2018, that if Police Bank wanted to remain relevant for customers, members we call them, we needed to change. Yeah. And so the genesis of it was really that digitalization writing that I did for Business Insider with the CBA and then Cybos. And so we started to put in place a plan which would be change of core banking system, digital front end for mobile onboarding, internet, loan originations, all those kind of things. That real easy to use for members at the front end and easy to use for my staff at the back end or at the front end when they're assisting the customers, because there was too much paper, too much pain, too much friction to really give us the ability to go next level. Yeah. But tech is the most important thing for this. Tech is the enabler of the service levels that we give. Yeah. It's not the end. Yeah. It's the enabler.
It's funny that you mentioned Cybos, because I was there as well at 2018, and I've been on record a number of times saying for me that was kind of like the watershed moment of fintech in Australia. And I was the reverse, right? I'd been very much, we're going to kill the banks, we're going to get right. And it really struck me that if Australia was going to be successful in fintech, we actually had to embrace the banks, and we had to support banks, and we actually had to work in true collaboration with banks in order for the industry to flourish.
So can I pick up on that point?
Yeah, sure.
Because I couldn't agree more. One of the things, I've been in banking for 37 years, and one of the things at many stages in my career, different ideas have popped up. And what struck me with the fintechs was they weren't really trying to collaborate. They were effectively saying, how can I make money out of you?
Yeah.
Right? And that doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
I'm happy to collaborate. Like, I'm a small bank, right? we'll collaborate with anybody who can provide a better service, and we can then offer that service to our members. But it was very much the business model was upside down. Which is to your point, I guess, that it, more collaboration, and then all customers get served better. Whether it's my customers or it's, anybody else's customers.
So I think this is an important point for us to discuss, and it's probably kind of going off track a bit, but it's a point I wanted to talk to you about anyway, which is I've today just published an article on LinkedIn, which I'm kind of trying to use it as a call to arms, really, and a wake-up call that we're in a pretty difficult moment, and there's things have changed, fundamentally changed, and whilst we might in many respects be back where we are in 2018, what we probably don't have ahead of us are the tailwinds that we had of very low interest rates and huge investment that came as a result of COVID. Now, for me, I feel that the way forward is, where are the opportunities? And we've been talking about this for decades, right? The consolidation of the superannuation space, the consolidation of the mutual and kind of smaller banking space. And it seemed crazy to me, Greg, that, we were offering more digital banking licenses when Australia's got something like 100 banks, or if not more. I think I coined the term, we need another digital bank like the world needs another Adam Sandler movie, right? And it kind of strikes me that, that for me, one of the key opportunities we've got moving forwards as an industry is to partner with your industry. What are your thoughts on that? And kind of going back to your point, what do you see as being the right way to partner and collaborate?
So it's like any business. You've got to understand, like if I'm trying to build a business, when I'm working with my members and I'm trying to give them an offering, I've got to make sure that my products suit their needs. And it's really a case with there's a lot of noise about payments, all right? But the only ones who really care about payments are the big guys. The rest of us are users of payment methods, not suppliers of payment methods. There's no fear for us in the payment stuff that's gone on, right? Because that's just a rail that we have to push money and receive money on. So I think that the fundamental thing, like any business, is understand the needs of the customer. So what does the customer need if it's a small bank like us? Less pain, less friction, less paper, right? And then if that then enables us to offer better rates on deposits, lower rates on loans, then we've got a symbiotic relationship that can last forever. And I think for me, fundamentally, that's one of the issues that hasn't really been solved by a lot of fintechs. Let's just call out a couple that have done what I think is a really good job. Frollo did a great job, right? Frollo's banking app, Frollo's open banking solution, the way that they've gone down that route, that was a great job, right? There's a bank in a box being built at the moment called Constantinople, solving a problem. Fantastic. Now, you talked about don't need another Neo when we've got all these mutuals. Constantinople's a bit early in their life cycle for us as an organisation, given where we are. But let's think about it. If I wanted to set up a mutual organisation, let's say you and I, we're going to found a mutual, right? And it's going to be called Dexter Greg Bank. What stack are we going to put it on? We're going to put it on Constantinople stack because we can scale from there. They've solved a problem that people have. Now, that means that you have to make trade-offs. Okay, well, we'll take Constantinople's lending origination system, their deposit system, all that kind of stuff, right? So there are trade-offs. But that solved the problem, right? And so I really do hope that they do really well. It's fantastic proposition. There are others coming in doing a similar kind of thing, solving the problem. And I think that's the next evolution because it is going to be harder to get capital now, right? The discount rate, where's cash rate? The cash rate in the US is 5.25%. So, the free money's gone. And the last couple of years has proved that you really do need to be better capitalized, understand the business cycle, not just flogging a product, and you need to work more closely with your clients. Like every business that's ever been built in the history of the world has always focused on their clients and worked closely with them towards success. And I think that's the bit that was missing, and that's a bit where we'll go to.
Yeah. With respect, I guess, to the approach and partnerships, What do you see as being some of the things that kind of are red flags to you? You know, and I just remember speaking to regulators in 2017, 2018. It was like if another dude in a man bun kind of rocks up telling us they're going to Uberize banking, we're going
to. So anything that smacks of regulatory arbitrage, which was all BNPL was, that's all Uber was, that's not going to work. But we've probably had that moment of regulatory arbitrage, and I don't think regulators are not in the thrall, regulators and government. And I would probably say government was more in the thrall than regulators. Yeah. I can't speak for our banking regulator, but my guess is they were pushed to offer those banking licenses in a manner that they probably didn't wish to. But we are where we are right now. And my sense is that things have to change. They will change. They are changing. And we're going to get there in the end because the relationships are growing. The need is there. Yeah. We're changing our core to Temenos. It's a fantastic offering. We're building a new digital front end. The fact that we've gone with Temenos for our new digital front end is what works for us. But that doesn't mean that works for everybody. And there's lots of different solutions. So there's lots of space for fintechs that want to work with the business to solve the problem that the business has.
Now, opportunity-wise, one of the bits of feedback that I've been given from people who have joined smaller organizations like Police Bank is that they've been really kind of quite pleasantly surprised by how people embrace change, which you don't necessarily get in larger organizations. You don't necessarily get even in startups, right? Like kind of people tend to get a bit kind of stuck with their idea and they want to go with it. How have you found leading, the change from a human perspective, and how have your people embraced?
This is a ground up change. So frontline. So when I first became CEO the week that we shut down in New South Wales, right? And banking essential service, we were still open. So when we were able to travel, I went out to the branches that we had, and I sat down with the members of the team and said, "What's up?" And they didn't hold back. And it was all about pain, friction, paper and all that kind of stuff. So from my point of view and our bank's point of view, this change is led by my team. I'm just facilitating the method of change. And it's a big book of work. But I think if I go to the core of that or pull on that thread and to go back to your point about why in, say, mutual banking space, we desperately want to change, it's because everything's about the member, customer in other people's terms, but everything is genuinely about the member. Mutual banks only exist for their members, and we have to be relevant, and we believe in what we do, and therefore we recognise, and COVID accelerated this, but personally for me, the light bulb moment for me was when the New South Wales government put our license on the phone. My kids don't carry their wallets anymore. They just carry a phone. And so that told us we had to change, and then Cybos reinforced that. And I think that's what COVID did for a lot of smaller organisations. It's like, and Service New South Wales did a fantastic job of showing the path in terms of what updating your technology can do for the service levels you can offer.
Yeah.
And so I think we're following that roadmap of customer centricity, customer first. What do we need to do to make sure we can serve those members now and into the future?
One thing I wanted to ask, I've kind of seen this across superannuation, I've seen this across the mutual space as well, is that you often have people who are on boards and making decisions who maybe have been a school teacher or a firey for their whole career, but wouldn't know the first thing about banking. How do you think as an industry you can kind of evolve the transformation and digital transformation and move ahead without having the expertise necessarily?
So I think what I'd say is over the last 10 or 15 years, probably 10 or 12 years, probably more close to the mark, there's been a lot of regeneration. And so you have still got those industry representatives. If you look at we have a member elected part of our board makeup, and we have a board appointed part of our board makeup. So the members elect who the members want, and largely they're law enforcement, policing. So that's the member elected bit. And then the board appointed is if there's any skills gaps, they will appoint those people. Equally, you can have a board advisor. We have a board advisor for transformation who's been doing this for, longer than I've been in banking, and, is well-versed and then provides advice privately. So what I'm trying to say is he's the board's advisor, not my advisor, if that makes any sense, right? So they can, they can have someone who's done this before. So I think there's a number of different models. There's other organisations. If you look at some of the bigger ones, they have got really diverse boards. It really depends on who your member set is, but it's not that hard to find like-minded people who share your values or share your community mindedness, customer centricity when you advertise. We're in the process of appointing another board appointed director. There's over 200 applications and they're quality.
Yeah.
So it's not hard to bring the skills in.
Awesome. Now, Greg, I also wanted to talk about the model, right? And it's, one of the challenges that we've got here in Oz is there is a kind of banking monopoly, and we've got this kind of customer inertia, right? Where, famously Aussies, and it really, it kind of seems at odds with my interpretation of the Australian kind of spirit, right? Is that we all seem to be kind of gung-ho and give it a go. And yet when it comes to actually, changing banks, we seem to be kind of, energy providers, we seem to be stuck in this state of inertia. What do you think is holding back mutual banks? If they're four members, and let's face it, right, the Royal Commission brought out some kind of pretty bad stuff. If you've got 4 members organizations, what do you think is stopping Australia, your average Aussie, from signing up to a mutual bank versus sticking there with a big 4 bank?
I think you're right in what you said. It's easy to just stick with what you know. The Dolomites account for the CBA was a fantastic inertia building, function for Australians as they grow up. You banked it. You banked at school.
I'm smiling here, right, mate, because I'm just so proud of my kids. They had Dolomites accounts, and they turned around to me about 3, maybe 4 years ago, said, Dad, it was actually before COVID, and they said, Dad, this is crazy. Why do we have to take cash into school once every month? And I can only ever get the money out by taking this book in and getting it out. I want this money to play video games. I want it. And so they've got Spriggy accounts in it that I've had for the last 6 years, right? Yeah. But they took all the money out of the Dolomites accounts and wanted to put it into Spriggy. But it's just such a good example, right? About how the demands of my kids, I don't think will tolerate the stuff that a big 4 bank.
No, they won't. And that's why, the light on the hill is the CBA. It has to be, right?
Yeah.
They're the biggest bank, got the biggest retail share, both sides of the balance sheet. The ecosystem that they're building or have built is phenomenal. They can afford to make mistakes in a way that a lot of smaller organisations can't. So what we have to do is we have to know our members and cherry pick the best parts of what they've got, leave some parts alone, like the BNPL stuff.
Yeah.
And go with that. I don't think that. But also the challenge for us, let's say Police Bank, for example, right? We are going to have, so Rob Bell built 86-400 with Cuscal. And from the moment I first met Rob in 2018, and he told me about his vision for what 86-400 was going to be in terms of what the app could do, how it was going to use open banking and all that kind of stuff. That to me has been, well, I can do that. And so that's the roadmap for us. Yeah. And I think if you do that, then you can break that nexus if you've got the right product, people by people, by product, by price, right? So if you've got the right products, you've got the right service, and you've got the right pricing, then you can pull people away from the inertia to be a CBA. Our school banking was CBC or whatever it was, one of the precursors to Westpac, right?
Right.
So my first job was at Westpac. I've always had an affinity for Westpac. I've worked there twice and banked there and all that kind of stuff. So even in the back of my mind, even though I've become a mutual banker for the last 15 or so years, Westpac I've still got that affection because the kids did it. So it's one of those things we've just got to have better pricing, better products, better service. The service we can definitely do. We need tech to give us the product and the pricing, but we can do that.
Now, you talked about 86-400 there, and look, I think it was a outstanding outcome for Rob and the team and Cuscal and, the exit that they had. But maybe, in terms of the industry as a whole, and, particularly that vision, I think was something that I was excited about as well, where you could see that, hey, is this the kind of the banking as a service platform for a mutual or for a kind of regional bank. Have you seen, you mentioned Constantinople there, have you seen anybody kind of deliver on this banking as a service kind of promise that was so prevalent in 2019, 2020?
So obviously Constantinople's relatively early in their journey. They've got, they're doing business banking for Great Southern and they'll grow from there. There are a couple of others. IBM and Nucleus have got a joint offering that they're looking to roll out. Temenos, who we went with, have got Temenos Community Bank, which is bank in a box, and really, aimed at the mutual space. But no one's done it successfully yet because we're very early in the journey. Like in 10 years' time, I would expect that a host of smaller mutuals are on someone's bank in a box. It's just a question of which one they go with. It was unfortunate with the 86-400 experience in that Rob and Cuscal were just a little bit ahead of where the mutuals were.
Yeah.
I wanted to white label 86-400, but my tech team said we can't based on the core we've got, all this kind of stuff. So I was devastated, A, that I couldn't white label it, and then B, that it went off to Ubank. But I understand why.
Yeah.
That's just where it was. And all the other neos of, that's the most successful one by a mile. Judo's a different story, but yeah. So they did a great job. It was just unfortunate timing. If they were doing it now, mutuals would be all over it because everybody knows that's what you got to do.
Talking of judo, I think, there's models that work and models that don't. And I think judo, I was always kind of dubious as to, do you put them in the neobank kind of bracket, because they weren't. I think what they've done exceptionally well is show that in this kind of first wave of fintech, that in first decade of fintech, that there were a lot of opportunities just to do better digital experiences for customers. In this next decade of fintech, do you think that there's still enough low-hanging fruit there that you can kind of focus and have a successful business just based on a digital experience? Or is there a case that perhaps now we need to evolve the products?
I'd say we have to evolve the product. You look at Unloan, the CBA's Unloan, right? Look at how many loans they've written. Not that many. When you think about how many loans get written in Australia every month, let alone every year. So it can't just be about digital. There's got to be something else with it. And I think that's where Joseph and the team at Judo really stand out. They started with a customer need. They're damn good bankers, and then they got good kit.
Yeah.
So, that's where, and they've hopefully they get through this cycle in good shape, because this will be, if things slow down the way that the Reserve Bank's trying to slow them down, this will be their first cycle that they've got to cycle through, if I put it that way. So hopefully they get through well. But they're just damn fine bankers. And then they've got decent kit, which is kind of the model we're trying with our transformation at Police Bank. We know our customers love us. We get told how good our service is. And when I say our service, I mean my frontline people's service is just phenomenal all the time. And I just have to give them the kit, the onboarding, the mobile, the internet, all those kind of things. Take all the paper out if I can and digitalise everything so that they can then effectively in a much different market put a similar value proposition in front of our members that Judo has in front of its customer set.
I've recruited through, I'm calling this a downturn because it feels like one to me, and I think depending on who you ask, it will feel like a downturn. But I've recruited through 3 of them, Greg, and I think the GFC was probably the one that was the hairiest for me, mainly because my clients were investment banks and Babcock and Brown and Allco to Macquarie were my 3 biggest clients at the time, and Lehman Brothers went down, and so I kind of got to see from the sidelines what that experience was like for people, but also what it really the aftermath of that was working with clients moving forwards. There was kind of a big demand in skills or expertise, and it was around capital and treasury management. Feels very much like we're back at that moment where treasury management is going to be fundamental in anybody being successful. Australia, I think, has quite a good bench strength in that skill. Where do you see opportunities, for kind of partnerships other than just the technology piece, but fintechs or say new product propositions to partner with, say, community banks?
So you're right about the treasury stuff, and I think that just reflects the change cycle that we're in the sense that money's not free anymore. We've got political volatility, we've got inflation, all those kind of things. So, the nuts and bolts of banking matter again. Where is your liquidity? I was treasurer at the Perm during the GFC. It was not the greatest experience of my life, though we did a brilliant job, and it's a fantastic institution. But what Silicon Valley Bank did this year, and then of course what happened to Swiss Bank, just reinforced that the nuts and bolts of banking are critical and always have been. Just people forgot for a while because it was easy to borrow money at zero. So then I think about where are the opportunities for growth, for collaboration with fintechs, and I think for me it's just got to come back to the member need or the customer need. And what's the answer that I'm trying to solve for? And so we know financial well-being is something that a lot of folks recognise they need to know more about and they need to know more of. So I think there's an educational piece that we're certainly focused on and that potentially somebody could deliver something where folks could use that to maybe increase the return on their deposit or decrease the rate on their home loan or something like that, right? That's very niche, but financial wellbeing to me, that also fits in with what we're trying to do with our customers. We rejoice if someone pays off their home loan sooner. We don't try and flog them another one. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a different model. So I think there's that. The payments, I'm not excited by payments innovations because I don't think people care.
Yeah.
Like what they want to know. We've got really, really good rails and really, really good processes here in Australia. If I send money to you from my police bank to your bank account, it'll be there in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
What else do average people want?
Yeah.
Right? What's the problem we're trying to solve? And the BNPL stuff was a smart regulatory arbitrage, but it was always credit, and now it is, right? The payment stuff to speed things up, it's like, you're already driving a Ferrari, so what else do we want, a Veyron or something? I think that there's a lot of companies doing really good work in loan originations and things like that to speed things up. But then again, if you're borrowing money to buy a house, got to interact with a human somewhere.
Yeah.
Or you want to interact with a human somewhere, most likely. And it probably doesn't matter if you can, approve that loan in 3 minutes. What matters more is the experience and making sure that they know that there's a human there.
Yeah.
So the use cases, I can't think of anything that gets me excited right now. Now that will change because customer preferences will change. You know, what I'm really keen on is got to have a really good mobile app that utilizes open banking to bring everything into the one ecosystem and then help people manage their finances. So that's for me. You know, there's a company in Singapore called MoneyThor, which has a nice offer on that. Frollo, you can use that. You know, the old 86400 app was heading down that route. So I think that's where the best use case is. And if you can do that, I think you might be able to start to pull people off the majors.
Yeah. Now, in terms of engagement, if somebody is, you know, we got a founder listening to this podcast and they've got a great idea, product, you know, what is the best way to engage with banking execs?
Yeah, that's a difficult one because first thing would be don't use a standard script that you bought off somebody when you're sending me an email. There's so many folk, like we're in the middle of transformation. So we're on so many companies from all over the world's radar.
Yeah.
It's the same old story. How can we make money out of you? They're not trying to solve a solution. So I think engage early.
So you mentioned Frollo there. You know, I mean, Gareth's, you know, one of the things I'm disappointed about is Gareth isn't in the industry at the moment. He's, I don't know if he's enjoying early retirement, but, successful exit, and he's kind of contemplating the next things. But I think Gareth is one of those people who I think was exceptional at engaging with execs and understanding the problem and then building a solution around the problem rather than his idea.
Yeah, and I think that fundamentally that's the issue, right? So most long-lasting good businesses have always been built to solve a problem. And you're right, there'll be some cutting-edge technology that will change banking in 10 years' time that someone's playing with now. But in the same way that, you know, as you mentioned, you know, when I used to travel, when I was in financial markets and I'd have a Palm Pilot and I'd also have an MP3, I remember saying to my wife, why can't they just put these two together, right? And next thing you know, out pops Steve Jobs and the iPhone. And so there is still going to be that. But I think you just got to think about what are all of the problems that bankers have. I think there's a lot of AI, back office, risk management. So if I was not working at Police Bank now or not in banking and I was trying to figure out what problem I had to solve, mine would be using technology to help me better manage my risks. And I mean the whole risks, right?
Yeah.
There is so many use cases in the risk management side of banking that somebody can help solve. Every job that can be automated will be automated in banking. There's just, when it happens, I don't know, but that's just the way it's going to be. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone gets sacked. It just means that you reposition your workforce to do other things, right? But that's the area for me. I'd be focused on using AI to help me with my genuine problems of managing risks because the world is complex, and that could be AML, it could be enterprise risk management, could be anything. But there's a whole suite of things now that I think about it in the risk management and the financial management part of the bank, where I'd be focused on rather than the front end salesy bits. I'd be focused on the back end because we've just leapt with AI into a space where it can just change the game. Yeah. And I'm excited by it. I really am. I can't wait. The next enterprise risk management system that we get will have AI embedded in it, and it's going to make us so much smarter and help us manage risk so much better. And it'll help us with fraud, so it'll stop our members getting scammed and all that kind of stuff. So now that I think about it, that's where I'd be going into.
I'm smirking here, right? Because I've been having this conversation for about the last 5 years, trying to encourage my network with the premise that there's a much bigger market for keeping bank execs out of jail
correct.
than there is for increasing their top line.
Yeah. If you've ever seen a a bank executive's bare statement.
Yeah.
They are complex.
Scary.
They are complex. And you've got to – banking's really easy, right? Your mum transfers money across to you so you can buy the kids an ice cream. That's really easy. But so many places along that route can go wrong, or the infrastructure that supports that can have issues. And so the simplicity that we expect stands on an amazing scaffolding, whether it's the payments network or it's the infrastructure in the individual financial institution or whatever it happens to be. So I couldn't agree with you more. The opportunity is in the back end because it's such an obvious problem that needs solving. How do you give me more information in real time so I can manage my risks better? Sold. Show me how. How do I do it?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because I think that you've hit the nail on the head. The reason why it's not tackled is because it is big and it's complex. And I think there's been, not only an addiction to cheap capital, but I think cheap ideas as well.
Yeah.
What's, something that's 20 years off. Yeah, you can kind of blow it up as much as you want, right? We can all be futurists.
Yeah.
It's not something you can quantify until after the event,
that's right.
So I think it's absolutely the case. And I think the challenge then for the industry is, it does take, and you mentioned Constantinople, and that's actually a podcast that I've had the most feedback on in about 2 years. Yeah. And, I think everybody that's listened to it has said, hey, that was a great podcast. And I think the reason why is because, McGregor's one, I think it speaks so well, but two, he's coming from a place where he's personally felt the problem, right? And it's huge. It's global, right? It's one that investors are happy to stump up a record seed round of 32 million at the beginning of a global downturn. Right?
Yeah. It's phenomenal. And, I wish him well. But just for us, it was just a bit too early in his life cycle relative to what I needed to do in a 2-year space.
Yeah. Well, Greg, we're coming up to a wrap. But before we do, what's kind of in the future for Police Bank?
So we should go live with our new tech stack May, June next year. That's a fundamental step change for us. So that'll be a brand new product offering, a brand new tech, and it will really drive growth and give us credentials to show to our customer set, our members, and everyone else that a mutual bank can really do it. So that's what we're aiming at. So we're looking forward to growing quite strongly from FY25 and out, but remaining with that member focus and that member centricity. So 12 more months of, intense transformation. But I guess, and your listeners know this, but it's important to say that when we go live, that's day one. That's not when it finishes, so then we'll be iterating from there. So it's going to be an exciting, next few years, I think.
Absolutely. You mentioned our listeners. We've got some seriously talented people that do listen to this show. And one of the things that I've found is that certainly the people in my network, if there's a correlation between them all, Greg, they tend to be mission-focused people. And if there are people who are listening to this who like the sound of the mission of Police Bank, what's the best way for them to find out about careers?
Probably Lyndall or myself on LinkedIn. Just reach out. We're happy to talk to anybody. One of the great joys of the last couple of years is getting to meet so many, people. I'm from financial markets before this, so I got to know a lot of really good technology people and heard their stories. So just reach out to Lyndall or myself. We tend to do all our advertising ourselves in terms of jobs. So they'll be up on LinkedIn and that kind of thing. But we've got a massive team running our transformation at the moment. But there's always room for good people.
Great. Well, Greg, it's been great to chat with you. Thanks for sharing everything. It's been really fascinating to get your views.
Thanks, Dexter. I really enjoyed the chat.
As always, folks, you can connect with me on LinkedIn and Twitter, or should I call that X? I'm not quite sure. As always, thanks for listening. If you're new to the show, make sure you give us a follow and please leave us a review because it really helps me get great guests like Greg onto the show. If you're coming back, thanks so much for your support. It really does mean a lot. Until the next show, keep safe. Fintech Chatter is produced by Tier 1 people, leaders in fintech executive search. We'll find world-class leadership talent to build world-class fintech ventures, and you can find us at tier1people.com.